Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, April 16th, 4 o'clock, and this is the regular meeting of the Jefferson Public Utility District Board of Commissioners. My name is Jeff Randall. I'm president of the board, and I'm calling this meeting to order. Jefferson PUD will be offering both virtual online meetings as well as in-person meetings unless advance notice is provided. Online participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. And if you're calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise a hand to request to speak. So let's do a quick roll call and make sure we have a quorum of commissioners. So I'm Jeff Randall, president of the board and commissioner for District 1.
Kenneth Collins, Commissioner, District 2.
Dan Tupper, Commissioner for District 3.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. We have the agenda in front of us. Are there any changes to the agenda needed by anybody?
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion, a second to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. We have an approved agenda. The first item after that is our public comment period for items not on the agenda. The public comment period allows members of the public to comment, limited to 3 minutes each, on any items not specifically listed on the agenda or for items listed on the consent agenda. Prior to any public comment, members of the public must first be recognized by the president and are not permitted to disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct and fair progress of the commission's meetings. After an initial warning by the president, individuals who intentionally violate these guidelines through actual disruption of the commission meeting will be dropped from the meeting, which won't be happening, hopeful. Okay, so do we have any folks who want to comment on things not on the agenda or on the consent agenda? And I see one hand up and we got some more. I'm going to go with the one on the screen. I saw that one first. That ends in 246. Roger, is that you?
Yeah, that's me.
Fire away.
District 2, Roger Isley. I have a comment and some questions. My comment is 1001 grinder pumps. What could possibly go wrong? My questions are, if grinder pump, if I'm a sewer customer, my grinder pump goes bad, does the PUD come out and fix it, or do I have to pay a plumber $500? Next question, one size fits all. If my grinder pump isn't big enough and I need a bigger one, is my wiring big enough to accommodate a larger pump? Did we put oversized wire in there? Third question is, when everybody's grinder pumps go off at 7 a.m., what does that do to our peak load? And thank you for your answers.
Okay, and Roger, can you stay until the staff reports, which is the next after public comment?
No problem.
Okay, yeah, we'll probably take it up then if Kevin or the staff can address it. And I'm assuming you're talking about the tri-area sewer.
I am.
design.
Yeah, I
Okay.
have questions about all those
Cool.
grinder pumps.
Okay, we'll see if we can get to that during staff reports.
Thank you.
Then we had folks in the room. Who was next? I'm sorry, I didn't see. Oh, did you have your hand? Leo's going. He's ready. Go for it.
I got last week, I had a customer contact me, or a potential customer, complaining about the PUD sign-up process for internet. Apparently they received eligibility email. When following the instructions in the email, it states that they need to go to this link to sign up for service. And when they go to that link, the only option they have, it says they have to pick a plan. The only option they have is PUD. And when filling out that form and signing that form online, it enters them into a contract with service from the PUD. And they're like, there should be a choice, you know, of who you want as your provider. Not limiting them to enter a contract right then and there with the PUD.
Okay, is that the completion of your comment? Okay. And can you stay for the staff report section too? So I'll just ask staff if they can consider that and perhaps respond during staff comments. Other comments, questions?
Yeah, hi, Phil Stover, Port Townsend District 1. I had a couple of questions I brought up a few weeks ago. I think I sent an email on them, and I just want to make sure they're still either in progress or maybe unanswerable. But the first one was did anybody happen to record the percent of capacity, total capacity that the Hastings substation transformer was running on the Monday after our cold weather outage on the Monday morning? And I think the general manager said he was submitting that question back down the line somewhere. The second question, more recently, let's see, what was the second question? Okay, well, I'll think of it.
Okay,
I do have a comment, though, that the wind outage recently was I guess it was kind of interesting. There was a flutter of the power, and then there were some later night outages in our Northport Townsend area. So don't know. I'd be interested to hear more about that in the general comment area.
okay.
Phil, when was that?
The wind one you're talking about?
Last night.
Last night. Okay, it was blowing hard
Okay,
last.
thank you.
Okay,
Oh, I remember my second
Okay.
question. Hope I'm
you
not
got about a minute left.
Okay. At one of the previous meetings, I brought up the point about in the Trocrest development off Albatross and Cook, there's a whole lot of gray conduit sticking up in the open and the front yards, and the general manager was gonna drive by, take a look and let us know when that might go down to 12 volts and at the ground level. And I'm interested in comment on that.
Okay, or if they're not ours, do we know whose they are or what the plan is? Okay. All right, who's next? Yes,
Give you this. I guess I'm gonna be a bit more formal.
okay,
You know,
okay,
so, good afternoon. I'm here regarding the trees on 49th Street again.
you might
So-
back it just a little bit so the camera can pick you up. I think it's probably getting your waist there, but no, you're good. You're good right there, actually.
So there are 24 trees that are slated to be removed April 22nd. One has been tagged to be preserved. Of the 24 trees, there are 5 trees with a diameter over 24 inches, which means they're considered significant trees. According to Port Townsend's municipal code, 19.06.130, standards for trees to be retained or planted. There are also 6 trees with a diameter of over 20 inches that could also be potentially considered significant within the meaning of this classification. Specific ordinances.
And actually, Addie, we have this on the agenda, this item. Would you mind holding? We did.
Yeah, 8.3.
What am I looking at?
Sorry, I didn't flip it.
No, it's all right. I didn't catch.
8.3, tree trimming
8.2. Would you
update.
mind holding it?
Okay.
Okay, it'll allow us to take it up and talk about it better. So, all right, well, we'll give you your full 3 minutes when we get there. Joy, did you have a?
No, there's.
Oh, okay. And we have somebody up here on the phone. Looks like Ron Hildebrandt. You're up if you're ready to go.
Good afternoon. I'm here concerning letters and emails I've sent concerning the Shine Plat LUD and the expected, hopefully, completion date for everything that went through. My home sale is being held up at this point because I've been told by the title companies they need to have the final LUD numbers in before I can proceed. And we finished, I believe, in August, the actual construction. So we're 8 months from completion date of the project and no announcement yet. So I'm really hoping for the PUD to finish up this process, and I understand there may be an update. So I'm encouraging everyone to do that and get us to the finish line as fast as possible.
Okay, and I'm just gonna ask Joel if you could put your legal beagle hat on, if you know anything about how pending LUDs can affect sales and title companies, or at least from the PUD's perspective, kind of what our responsibilities are. If you can just think about that before we get to the staff manager reports.
Sure.
Okay. Anything else on the consent agenda or not on the regular agenda, or just things that you folks wanted to bring up? Going once, going twice. Okay. I think we made it through that. And I forgot to say, this is for my fellow commissioners. I'm hoping that we can finish a little early tonight by 5:45. I've kind of got a hard stop. I'm trying to catch a ferry at that time, but we don't have a huge long agenda. So anyway, hoping we can do that. All right, so we've made it through the public comment period. We now are at manager and staff reports. And Kevin, I don't know, we had a number of questions. I hope you were keeping track there. If not, I'll try to help you. I was taking some notes. And you're muted, Kevin. Still says mute. There you go.
Yeah, I'm bringing up some notes and some things I may be weak on. I'm going to start with the grinder pump list of questions. So the grinder pumps, I don't know who's responsible to pay. It will be in with the city. The first pump is put in by the grant amounts that the city has.
That's the city or the county?
Or the county has, excuse me. Thank you, Jeff. So I don't know who will pay. I will follow up and get back with everyone. The grinder pump failure rate is about 5%. So you can run those numbers kind of back and see, if you have 1,000 grinder pumps, they do have a failure rate. They don't fail a lot, but they do have a failure rate built into them. As far as the wire size of the pump is sized to the pipe and the effluent and everything. So the wire is sized to the pump. So I'm not expecting any problems that way. And I think that was kind of the gist of the questions on the grinder pumps.
I think he had an overall question too about, gee, whose idea was this, 1,000 grinder pumps or whatever? But the big reason on that was just when they looked at putting in gravity sewer lines, it made the whole project infeasible from a cost perspective. So this is really the only way.
Roger asked about peaking load if they all came on, I think was the other question.
Yeah, that was another one.
The peaking load, I don't think that will be a problem for the PUD. Hopefully they would be on different circuits. So, with 1,000 pumps, if they all would kick on at one time, there would be some spikes, but it's no different than 1,000 houses with their lights being turned on, about the same. So don't think that will be a problem. We will look at it though.
Roger, is this really brief? Otherwise, I'm going to ask that you follow up with email rather than we have a lot of questions to go through. Is it a quick clarification or? Don't see your hand still up. Okay. Yeah. If you can follow up via email, and again, this is something that's been going on a long time. Ken, you got your hand up?
Quick question. Are we really looking at 1,000 grinder pumps?
No.
Is that the estimate?
No, it's several hundred. I mean, maybe eventually a build out, but that's not what they're looking at now.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's something like maybe up to 300 or something like that, and initially not that many. Okay, Kevin, you want to keep going? Leo had his question about that initial contact thing, or the initial contact with the customer on fiber to your home.
Yeah, so what we need there is consent for the customer to actually build on their property. It's not necessarily connect to the PUD, but it is a letting us know that they will be willing to have us put the fiber in their property. Also, just so everyone knows, the PUD, we don't have contracts. They can use us for a month, 3 days, or 10 years and quit at any time. So the contract issue isn't like what typically you see with Wave or Astound where it's, you know, a year contract, something like that. So I will look into it a little further, but I don't think that that's an issue with our customers or with us tying them to a long-term contract. Most of the ISPs do long-term contracts.
Yep, you're freezing up there, Kevin. You might want to kill your video.
Load capacity, I'm going to next from Phil, if that's okay.
Could we do a quick follow-up on Leo didn't technically bring it up, but he had a conversation with me and I had a conversation with Will, and it was this issue of it was the issue of ISPs access to who our customers are, and that we have fiber to, and potential customers. Yeah. And if we don't have time to talk about it now, I'm wondering if we could talk about it at a future meeting, because I think his question kind of relates to that same issue. Okay, we're starting the process with the customer. At what point does the customer made aware that they have a choice of the PUD or of other ISPs, and how do we communicate that? I think that's kind of the issue.
And I have turned my video off because I'm having some internet connections.
I'm gonna do the same.
If we could postpone this, I have some answers. There's some logistics to putting some things on the bill, you know, keeping track, Jeff. So if we could postpone this till the next meeting, where I thought it was as simple as putting a little thing on the website, a disclaimer that said, yes, you can share my information. No, you can't. The tracking and how all that would happen becomes a logistic problem for us. So I need to do a little more research into that, Jeff, if that's okay. And we'll bring it up next time, because there are logistics of tracking who says yes and who says no to sharing information.
Okay, and I'll just ask the other commissioners, are you okay having this on the agenda at the next meeting? And are you kind of interested in it also? Kind of
Yes.
how? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So there you go. Please do that. And so next one. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to point out, so I sent you guys a copy of how the other PUDs earlier today, how they notify us and how they give us a whole list of every single serviceable address by them. And how they do it.
Got it.
There's no customer information, just addresses of potential customers.
Okay, thank you.
Was there more than just Kitsap PUD? I didn't see other PUDs listed.
That was the only one that I sent you guys. It was just right there, recently came to me, so I just clicked on it forward.
Okay, if you have any others you want to provide before the next meeting, that would be fine too. Okay, so then you had Phil.
Hold on, Jeff. I do believe Mason County 3 does not share any information, but I don't know that. That's what I have been told, and I'll bring that back, because I don't think they share anything. But
Yeah,
I will bring that back to the commission.
Whatever benchmarking that really is relevant would be very helpful, as well as a legal opinion.
Okay,
Well,
next.
If you want, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Go ahead.
Someone should forward me what Leo's been providing then.
Okay. And then I think Phil Stover's comment about the cold outage and then the wind thing and the peak loading on the substation transformer, if we know about what that is.
Yes, I do have some information, Bill. It's not put together quite right, but on the Hastings substation, during the outages, and I'm not counting cold load pickup because there is a difference. We were peaking at about 120% of the transformer. With that said, the Dana Roberts substation, we had taken load off it and put it on Hastings. That's why it was running higher than kind of normal. It was down to about 75% capacity. So during a real normal condition, we would move some of the load off of Hastings to Dana Roberts. So that gives you kind of a feel. This is an FYI. One of the things we have been looking at, and the commissioners are aware of, possibly doing an additional substation down by the paper mill. We've gone to the county to see about property. And if we would do that, we could pull quite a bit more load off the Hastings substation based on where it is. So that is something we're moving rather quickly on, because for our conceptuals on the engineering drawings, we have to know within a couple weeks whether we can put a substation there, have to look at possible changes to Hastings substation.
Was
Phil?
it on the agenda for the Board of Commissioners, that real estate issue?
Yes, it was, and they directed the PUD to work with Mark and see if there was really two parcels we were looking at, and they wanted to save part of the upper parcel. And if need be, I can bring up a map. I was going to talk a little bit about this down in the agenda, but what we would do is probably purchase the smaller piece and then do a boundary line adjustment to get the room we needed for the new station. A lot of things in flux on that front, though, so I don't want to say for sure how things will turn out, but the county commissioners were receptive, and I believe, in a rather short amount of time, we can come to an agreement.
Okay. And then the issue of, was there anything to report on the windstorm last night? Any unusual?
First, because if I don't go by my list, I'll forget something, Jeff.
Okay.
Trail Crest, the conduits. I did make it out on site the next day. We are looking at going in and putting some vaults over the conduit. We did run into a problem where it looks like Astound has used some of the conduits, and that will be something that Joel and I'll have to address in a future letter to Astound about continuing to use our conduit when technically it's trespassing, but we will work through those issues. And the outage last night is based on our next topic. It was a tree limb that came down and took out the circuit for everyone. Our tree policies, it's a double-edged sword. If the trees we need to work on, and the reliability, and that will be a bigger discussion on 8.3 on reliability and our responsibility to the balance between trimming trees and not.
Okay. And then Ron Hildebrandt's issue.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Dan has his hand up.
Okay, Dan?
Yeah, real quick for context, Kevin, was that limb from a tree that was inside the right of way, or was that from a tree outside of the right of way? Just curiosity.
I'm going to have to bounce that to Josh. I don't know if he knows that question. A lot of times we just hear what the results were, not necessarily where the tree or limb came from.
Yeah, I haven't got to talk to the crew that was out there last night. I've been on rest all day, so from working all night. But once they get back, I can have that information for you at a later date.
Yeah, it's not critical. I just want the public to understand that, it's not always trees in the right of way, so.
Go ahead, Kevin.
And then my last one that I have, and then if I miss something, please somebody speak up. Ron, we apologize for not getting this done. When Sam left, there was some cleanups to do, and this did not get cleaned up. Mike Bailey is working on it. And to bring this full circle run, we have reached out to legal counsel. Joel Paisner is directing us how to finish this up and the next steps to bring to the board and how to kind of move this through as fast as we can. You will get a priority. We will get it done. And to the board, we should have had it done sooner, but it didn't get done, and we are making sure it's a priority now to make it happen.
And I guess, Joel, I was just curious about it. I guess as I think about it, it would be something where a title company is just going to report on what the current status is. And I would presume that they would say something like there is an incomplete LUD on here, so the amount is undetermined, but I don't know if you have anything to.
Well, there, I would think from a title company point of view that they, in their opinion, they might not be able to clear title on this parcel without a set amount, because it is an assessment on title. And so I get that. I'm just wondering, Mr. Hildebrand, if there's a way that we could provide, kind of a good estimate to your title company, and what might satisfy them. Because I hate to hear that you're tied up in a closing. So, if it makes sense, I'm happy to, as counsel to the PUD, work with the title company on helping close that loan. If there's something, if there's some sort of certification we can provide in advance or something like that. Happy to work with you on that process.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. If we had basically a good faith estimate of approximately what it was on something from the PUD, that may suffice. There has been several properties sold in the LUD district already. One of which was, I'm sure, a cash sale, and the other one was VA. And I don't think they disclosed it, which is how they got through it. But I certainly wouldn't do it. And traditionally, an LUD needs to be paid off before the home is sold. So I think I've got a new neighbor with a very ugly surprise coming his way.
Well,
So-
as they
so-
say, no good deed goes unpunished, right?
Joel, I just forwarded you Ron's email with his contact info at the bottom. If you could just shoot him your contact info so he can get with you.
You bet. And just as a preview, I mean, we need to have a final hearing before the commissioners. I think Mike outlined the process that he intended on using to me, and it looked fine from my perspective. So as long as we have all the costs, we just need to provide notice to everyone that we're going to conduct a final hearing before the commission and set the amount. So just
Okay.
as a heads up,
and
I'll
that's
work
been-
with Mr. Hildebrand.
Okay, and that's been one of our concerns in the area, is we have not seen any of the accounting for that at all.
Yeah.
Whether or not the contingency has been spent and what those costs were. This was a 15-year process, and it's still, now we're into year 16, I think. So we'd like to push this along and finally get this done. And there was a lot of work that was done on PUD expense, as well as the LUD at the same time. So I'm sure that somebody will need to parse that out carefully.
Do we have any rough estimates on when that hearing can take place, or is it still so much work to be done that we can't be very specific on that?
I think we're getting closer. I sent Joel because I wasn't involved in the original LUD process. So I've been trying to get it all figured out what it needs to be done. So I think we're getting closer. We just need to double check all the cost and what's the right amounts. We're also asked Olga with Moss Adams to make sure that we are capturing everything that we need to capture.
Okay, so maybe like in a couple meetings?
So hopefully maybe the next meeting we can bring back about getting the hearing set and then get it taken care of.
And get it, okay. All right. Dan, you still got your hand up?
Sorry, I'll take that down.
Okay. Kevin, I think we've cleared all the questions, so you can proceed with what you were going to say in the first place.
I think for now, because we're gonna try to get out a little early, we can move on to the regular agenda or the commissioner's report.
Okay. Get my screen up here. So we are at commissioner reports. I know you guys are traveling, so I don't know if you're prepared to do this or not, but if you are, Dan, are you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm good to go. And I apologize for having my video down, but I'm in the same hotel Kevin is and the internet is weak here. So I'll move forward. I attended the PPC member forum on April 3rd. PPC staff gave a refresher on Western market structure and RTO challenges for the Western region. I attended the PPC executive committee meeting on April 4th. Suzanne Cooper and Sarah Buchsock from BPA gave a report on the BPA record of decision that was released for the 2028 provider of choice contracts. They also related information on the position that BPA has taken on a leaning towards, firstly, joining a day-ahead market, and secondly, that their market preference by PPA staff is going to be towards the SPP Markets Plus product. PPC staff also gave reports on the Markets Plus progress after SPP had filed its markets and tariffs proposition with FERC to what appears to be a favorable position with FERC. So PPC will supply comments and act as a filing intervener supporter of the Markets Plus design and tariffs and government structure that's before FERC. BPA will hold meetings and workshops throughout the summer on the day-ahead markets participation process. And BPA will also hold sessions this summer for the process of finalizing the product design for the 2028 provider of choice contracts. BPA noted that they had received 17,000 comments on 147 separate contract points that they took into consideration when formatting the record of decision for the 2028 contracts that was released here in March. So BPA has an anticipated timeline of having contracts crafted by September of 2025, having them signed in December of 2025, and then being implemented obviously in 2028. I attended the Port Ludlow Village Council meeting on April 4th. I attended our special meeting on April 9th for the procurement manual update and to hear the presentation by the Beckett Point community on their water system. That was a very productive meeting, I felt, and a very thoughtful presentation by the members of the Beckett Point community. Later that day, on the 9th, I attended the second County Growth Management Steering Committee meeting. Laura Hodgson, who is the housing planner and data manager for the Washington State Department of Commerce, presented on how population data is currently used by counties and municipalities for growth planning. Commerce will be introducing a new option in June for counties like Jefferson to more accurately evaluate their population growth planning. The two that they have now don't quite fit for a county like ours. So, and we weren't the only ones. So this product should help county planners on trying to figure out what the true population effects are going to be. The county also passed the committee also passed a motion to use the medium growth projection provided by county and city staff that was a 2045 projection of county population reaching 40,500 residents. I attended the NOAANET meeting in Spokane and toured their new office and the new NOC. It's very impressive, nice, compact, really light, a lot of windows, open view. Really inviting space inside. NOAANET has 70 days of liquidity through March 1st. The revenues are up 10% over budget for February at, I think it was about $3.7 million total revenues. The first member loan repayment installments are due out in May, or on May 1st, but it sounds like they might get those payments posted a little sooner. So I don't know I can't remember the term that those are going to be. I think was it 50,000 or 20,000, or I forget how much we loaned it, but we will start to receive payments back on what that loan amount was. I think it was 50,000 was the total amount.
Mike's saying, yeah.
Yeah, so there'll be a special meeting prior to the May 8th NOAA meeting in Pend Oreille. The meeting reps, or excuse me, the member reps will take up a vote on the equal ownership change to the bylaws that the board has already passed. So that should, from what I understand, there shouldn't be any hiccups in that, and that should move forward. I met with General Manager Street on April 15th. I'm at Skamania for the Waputa annual meetings this week. I'll accompany General Manager Street and Finance Director Bailey to Washington, D.C. on April 21st through April 25th to meet with Rural Utility Services, CoBank, our congressional representative and senators, and to attend the NRECA Legislative Conference. I will attend the Public Power Council meeting on May 1st and 2nd. I will meet with General Manager Street on May 3rd. I will attend the Jefferson County Fire Chiefs meeting on May 6th, and I will attend the NOAA meeting at Pend.
Okay, I'm guessing you said that's your report. You kind of dropped off there. Ken, you want to go next? I think he might be muted.
Yes. Sure. So sadly, I am not in Skamania. I had planned to be, but I managed to tear a meniscus in my right knee.
Ooh.
And so I'm functioning through the miracle of chemistry.
Mm.
But here is my report. On the 4th of March, I attended the Economic Development Council meeting. They discussed the recompete grant. And they also talked at some length about the portion that would go to the Natural Resources Innovation Center. They're looking at a way to monetize the wood chips surplus that is in both Jefferson and Clallam counties, and ways to revive the forest products industry. There are a number of barriers, including housing, finding qualified applicants, the availability of childcare, transportation, and they also listed racism as one of the barriers. The EDC is, I think, going to embark on a campaign to raise some money, looking for both sponsors and members. It's not clear what the particulars of either of those statuses will be. So I will report when it becomes clearer as to what those designations represent. The EDC wants to staff a volunteer committee with specific expertise in real estate development, legal, economic analysis, and grant writing. They're still identifying a need to plan for executive succession, and will set up a task force. Interesting additional item that they're looking at wanting to reconfigure the public sector cabinet and include not only a manager of one of the local government organizations, but also an elected individual, presumably one who currently sits on the EDC board. This was something that was brought forward by Cindy Brooks, and I think it's now being floated out among the different governmental organizations. The Finance Committee reported that the staff raises that have been approved will reduce the end-of-year surplus by approximately 2/3. On the 8th, I met with the general manager. I attended on the 9th the special Board of Commissioners meeting. As Commissioner Tupper reported, that included discussion of the sewage issues, the report from Beckett Point, and the procurement manual. Again, on the 12th, I met with the general manager. To the extent that I can remotely attend the Waputa meeting this week, I will do so. I am scheduled on the 25th to be on John Morrow's radio program. Hopefully I'll have some idea what he'll want me to discuss before then. I will meet with the general manager on the 26th. On April 2nd, will be another EDC board meeting, and I'll meet again with the general manager on April 3rd. And that's my report.
Great. Okay, my report is that I was in Hawaii from April
Hey, Jeff?
1st. Yeah.
Just to clarify, so Cammy doesn't catch it. Ken said April for those last 2 dates. I think he meant May, didn't he?
I did mean May.
Yeah, just so Cammy doesn't get confused there.
Thank you. I got confused, but Tammy shouldn't.
From April 1st to the 7th, I was on Oahu for spring break with my son, and we did a little tour around the island at one point. And Hawaii is famous for having 100% of their power until recently coming from burning oil, and now they're up to about 30% renewables. And it's so sunny and windy there. I was kind of surprised that there wasn't more of it happening. And then on the way back, I was sitting next to a guy who actually was a contractor, and he was retrofitting some of the wind turbines because their soils are so strange there. They were getting some of their wind turbines wobbling because they've got, volcanic and all sorts of hard geology. So I think they've got lots of resources in Hawaii, but it's kind of a challenge sometimes for them to meet it with renewables. I was at the special board meeting on the 9th. On the 10th, I attended in person my first Northwest Power and Conservation Council meeting. And for those who don't know, they were set up by the Northwest Power Act. There's 8 members on the council, 2 appointees from the governors of each Montana, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. And it was a fascinating meeting to go to. I've watched some virtually, but you don't get a sense of the dynamics between the people unless you can sit in the room and watch. And I was really curious as to the tensions because there's such a difference between the energy and carbon policies that Oregon and Washington have adopted and that Idaho and Montana have adopted. And I was able to talk to some of the members afterwards. And what I heard was that there's actually, because it's an 8-member board, they have to agree. There's no odd number, and it's evenly split between these states that kind of have different policies. So they do a pretty good job of reaching consensus and of appreciating the larger challenges we have in our region with energy and transmission and wildlife needs. So that was pretty optimistic and for me. And they're interesting too. I think they're the most diverse board that relates to energy I've ever seen. Of 8 members, they had 1 African American, 1 woman, and 1 Native American. And for me, that was nice to see too. So a diversity of backgrounds and interests and good discussions. Puget Sound Energy had Josh Jacobs there, and he was talking about what they see, what PSE sees as their future load forecasts. And he said that typically they've been about 1,500 megawatts short in terms of their power planning each year. And they're looking forward, they're realizing that is not a good plan, that the cost of energy on the market is going to be much higher in the future. So they're trying to catch up, and they're doing it with an all of the above proposal, including looking at the feasibility of small nuclear, looking at a lot of new wind and solar, looking at new energy storage, and they've got a contract to look at a 10 megawatt battery, but it uses air and iron. So it's this one of these new concepts that doesn't use exotic metals, and it would work for 100 hours. So they've got a contract with the company to explore and build that. And they're going to be coal free in 2025, and they're targeting getting to 63% renewable energy soon. I can't remember if that was by 2045 or what it was, but, and then they just had 34% renewable energy in 2020. So they're aggressively trying to clean up their utility grid. Let's see what else. Moving on, met with the folks who are here tonight on the 14th to talk about the trees along 49th that we're going to have later on the agenda. On the 15th, I had lunch with John Morrow. That was a good meeting. And I'll email John Ken just so I give him a heads up that you're looking for info on what the meeting will, or what you'll be asked for on the radio. Met with Kevin Street
Thank
earlier.
you.
Looking ahead, WAPAG virtual meeting on the 22nd. On the 23rd, I travel to Tri-Cities and we have a reception with the outside director candidates for the Energy Northwest Executive Board. And then we'll have our board meetings on the 24th and 25th. On the 1st and 2nd, I'll be virtually listening into the PPC meetings. And on May 3rd, I'm not able to go to the PNUC meetings, which are also in Portland. And I'm just kind of wondering, is anybody going to PNUC for that May meeting on May 3rd? Joy, are you going?
Not going to that one on May 3rd because I'll be on vacation.
Okay. All right. Either of the other commissioners, are you going? Dan, are you going to, you said you're going to PPC?
Yeah, but I didn't book a second night to stay down for PNUC. I figured that one was one I had a meeting scheduled with Kevin for Friday, I think, so.
Okay. All right. That is my report. So unless there's any questions.
So, yeah, real quick on the Energy Northwest, I'm gonna make one more plug here for Senator Sheldon. I read the resumes again, and I think he has more nuclear background. I don't know how Commissioner Collins feels about it, but I still feel like I would like to see us support him for one more round in that outside board position.
And I'll make my opinion known. I strongly support Tim Sheldon for the position.
Thank you for your feedback.
Thank you. And one other quick thing, Jeff, on the PSE, it seemed I read some reporting too, that I think one other thing is they're looking at is a peaking plant. I forget how many megawatts that's hydrogen and clean gas, I think.
Thank you for bringing that up. They talked about their peaker plants and they said that they're going to play an even bigger role and that they're old. Most of them are built in the 1970s or run by gas. And they are looking at trying to, start them with gas and then switch over to either clean diesel or hydrogen. So yeah, they're absolutely looking at those things.
And I don't know that they've completely sold out their involvement and their assets with Coldstrip. So I don't know if that's something that they've done already or whether they plan to do that by 2025. But I think they still have an interest in Coldstrip. So I don't know if they're going to meet their goal on coal or not.
Yeah, I think they've exited that and they're, I think, looking at what other energy sources can they develop over there to use that transmission that exists. But okay, so moving on, we have a consent agenda with a number of items on it. Do we have any issues with those items or can we move the whole package?
I'll make the motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to second on the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. The consent agenda is approved. And let's see, on to old business, long-term update. It sounds like, Kevin, maybe you started touching on it, but why don't you continue?
Yeah, and I'll continue. I had a couple drawings, but because of my internet connection, I'm not going to share my screen. So the PUD has contracted with ICPE, an engineering firm out of Utah, to do some analysis on our distribution circuits, look at our transmission lines, and our substation capacities. This is all in conjunction with like a 20-year, a 10-year, and a 4-year work plan. The board, in hopefully early June, we will have some meetings that we can sit down with drawings and review the costs associated with the needed improvements in both our distribution and our substation systems. The hard part that we're going to have to face is the sheer cost. these substations in the last 3 to 4 years have gone from anywhere from $5 to $7 million to close to $10 million to build a new substation. So the priorities, how we bring equipment in, transformers are still about 2 years out for the big substation transformers. They may come down a little bit, I don't know. We have 2 substation transformers on order. We have a brand new one that's going to go into Quilcene, and we have the rebuilt one that is going to go back into Port Ludlow. Both of those are key areas that really need some updating. The other area we're working on is the Port Townsend area. We are looking to add a completely new substation. If we can come to an agreement on a new station, it is cheaper in the long run for the PUD to build a new station versus adding a second bay at Hastings. Hastings, as you remember, is on Sheridan, and it packs a lot of the load that goes around through Cape George and down over into Irondale. They tie together. The new station we're proposing would kind of cut across the middle and feed both directions, which is a benefit to the PUD. And it gives us some redundancy for customers when we do have some of these wind outages. It'll allow us to do some switching and some things that way. So again, I apologize for not having the drawings. I just feel if I throw them on my screen, I will get bombed. So
Well, I think this is a longer term thing too. And Kevin, is this part, and Dan's got his hand up, but I wanted to ask a quick one first. Is this partly coming out of that engineering analysis that you were having done?
yes, all of this is tying together based on our loads and wires and everything. You're correct. Yeah.
Dan?
So I know that's early in the process, Kevin, but are we going to see a cost prospectus on the Hastings Bay build versus the whole new substation build? I mean, what kind of timelines? I know you're still working on engineering and conceptuals, but are you going to bring both options forward with the financials for both options?
I will bring multiple options forward on Hastings, and I wish I could bring up Hastings. I could try. The problem I'm running into Hastings, and I would encourage all the commissioners to kind of drive by Hastings. It is landlocked on the corner, and for me to fit 2 transformers in there, I am basically property line to property line with our equipment. And that's part of the problem, Dan. It's not only the costs, it's how to squeeze the necessary equipment into those spaces. It would mean additional steel tower foundation work. And this isn't that bad. The transformers would be so close together, we would put a block wall. But because of other requirements, we may have to put block walls on the outsides, not just in between. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, Kevin, on the long term
decision? And it's not only the decision, it's timing. We will have to space our work out in such a way that we pick up our priorities first. And then we hope that we have chosen correctly what has to be done first.
Okay. Do you have more presentation on the long-term update?
If there's no questions, I apologize for my connection, but
yeah, and you were breaking up a little bit too, so it's probably best to maybe save it for another day. Okay, so should we move to the electric rate schedule KVAR charges? Okay, so Gene, I just want to say in the spirit of time, I didn't know how thoroughly you were going to go through this. It looks like you're seeking a motion from us approving giving this money back to our customers because they were building correctly. And you're kind of reminding us of what was actually adopted and that staff accidentally didn't know. But if you can kind of keep it as tight as you can, because it seems like a pretty straightforward issue.
It is straightforward. I didn't have a presentation just to discuss. Oh, I'm muted. Sorry. Okay. It's straightforward, just need the approval. Rates were adopted June of 21. We redlined the reactive power out and it did not get removed from billing. Customers were still billed. Total of 55 accounts for $88,097.20 over the last 3.5 years. 47 customers were affected.
And you need a board approval because this involves something over 2 years.
Over
Was that
2
the number?
years.
Okay. Okay. Do the commissioners have any questions on this one? Dan?
So just curious, was this strictly an internal miscue, or was this something going through NISC, our billing services? I mean, just a little more clarity there.
No, this was an internal issue. And I know we're pressed for time, so I won't go into a lot of detail, but when we went home from COVID, attention to detail was impacted. Processes were forgotten. And we're working on getting back to pre-COVID work levels. I have my staff coming in, instead of getting their money out in the morning, we're doing training every morning. We've gone back to policy and we're reviewing every policy and the process that goes along with the policy. So I have a very dedicated team and they are themselves not very happy about this. So.
Well,
Well, thank you, Gene. I appreciate all that, and we appreciate everything that your group does.
well, and mistakes happen. You're not going to do tough stuff without making mistakes. So hopefully we learn from it and hopefully we don't make similar ones. Ken?
So I move that the Board of Commissioners approve the refund of the erroneous charges to our customers.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, and I'll just read it out of the recommended motion. Approved by motion, billing adjustments for affected accounts, crediting customers for all reactive power charges billed after July 5th, 2021. Okay, so we have a motion on the table in a second. Is there any questions or comments by the public? Seeing none. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Aye. All right, the motion's passed. Thank you for getting that back to those folks. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the tree trimming update. And I know, Kevin, you are without a screen. I gave Mike a photo and we asked to put this on the agenda last time because we had some folks who were here and I met with them, and apparently there's 24 trees that are proposed to be removed. They're older, 50 years, some of them. Some of them are younger, some might be older than that. Oh, do you have somebody needs to be muted there? And it's scheduled to happen next week. So, Kevin, I don't know if you want to start.
Yeah, I can start. And so these trees are being cut down to do reliability to places like Trailcrest. This is part of our 3-phase upgrading that we started approximately 2 months ago when we were having all the problems on Cook Avenue and 49th Street. It is a continuation of that project. We built phase 1, 3-phase power, approximately 15 poles. Now we're going to do phase 2, which is the next stretch of single phase to 3-phase lines. These trees have been trimmed over the years. They've been topped. I believe in this case that the trees aren't what should be underneath the power line. So we have a recommendation to take the trees out so that we can move forward with our project. And if any questions, I will be able to answer them, but we do believe this is a part of our reliability in this area is to rebuild and do some tree management through that area.
So Kevin, I have a question, and after our conversation this morning, I went through the tree trimming policy that the PUD has adopted, and there's a lot of different language in there. And one of the things it refers to is this ANSI 300 standard, which is a national standard for utilities working on trees. And it talks about when there's trees under the power lines, the utility should remove or prune them. And there's a lot of language in there about how you prune trees. And when I spoke to you and when I've spoken to Scott in the past, I definitely got the sense that when we're building new power lines like this, because these are all new poles and we're running all new power lines up there, that the PUD's policy is to have no trees under the lines. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and Jeff, on new construction, for example, when a customer comes in, and we don't allow this anymore, but when they used to put a single phase line across their property to get them in, we required them to take all the trees down so that when we came through and set the poles and strung the wires, it was clean construction. We weren't going to have problems in this area for a long time. So on new construction, we have been very adamant with the landowners in that we have to clear the trees out underneath the line. An example of reconductoring, and that's what we're doing in this stretch. We're putting new poles in and putting new conductor in. Instead of a single phase line, it'll be a 3-phase line. This is similar to what happened along Highway 3 when you go across the Hood Canal Bridge, and PSE was rebuilding that line between the bridge and Silverdale. They came in and took a lot of the trees out so that when they finished up the project, it was a reconductor pole change out, but it was the best construction that you can do in this type of area.
Okay. So, and Mike, I don't know, can you put that photo up?
Yeah.
That I gave you. So on the way out here, and I'll get to your question after this, Ken. On the way out here, I was just looking for places where we have 3-phase and there are trees underneath. And this was just, I was almost late for the meeting, so I just stopped and took this one, but this is on Hastings. And Ken, I'm sure you probably see this out on Marrowstone too. And Dan, you probably see this down around Quilcene. We have a lot of situations with trees under our power lines. And my concern is if we're trying to get rid of all the trees under our 3-phase power lines, we're going to be lynched. And for good reason, because trees help with a lot of things. They help with, if we take out all these trees, we're going to have more flooding. And it makes our communities hotter. They help cool us off. They do lots of good things. So I'm seeing where we've worked with things, and having looked at those trees out on 49th, they are red cedar and Doug fir. They're not the kind of trees you want to have under power lines. That being said, a lot of those trees have been there for a really long time and have been cut kind of like this. This is not an evergreen tree. You've got 2 trees here. One's a deciduous and one's an evergreen, but the trees out in 49th, they're kind of doing this. Some of them have grown out over the road and they've grown inwards and they're kind of forking like that. And I'm wondering if some of those trees could be kept that are more in that growth pattern, if they could be cut so that they don't grow up into the power lines the next 7 years. And I think that's what our customers are asking who are out in that neighborhood. And some of them I think do have to go because they're going straight up and they're younger ones. But I'm just kind of wondering if any of them could be looked at more like this situation here. Because I think it's going to be a big impact out there, and it's like a stretch of, 100 yards or so where you've got trees on both sides of the road kind of doing this lovely canopy thing, and we're going to mow them down on one side. So I guess that's for you, Kevin.
Okay. I didn't know if you wanted Commissioner Collins to go with his question or if you wanted me to respond.
Kevin, why don't you respond, and then I'll ask my question.
Okay. And Jeff, there are places in primarily Port Townsend that looks like this. They are a challenge for the PUD. It does affect our reliability, and it does affect our ability to put the lines back up when we do have problems. The difference here, Jeff, is in 49th Street, we are rebuilding. We're putting in new poles, new wire. We're basically starting new. In today's world, you wouldn't build the power line there. You would either have to take some of the trees or move the power line over. In this case, there's really not a place to move the power line to. And on 49th Street, if you go another 100 yards, it opens up and there's no trees on the other side of the home. So, we're trying our darndest to make a reliable system, and it is a juggling act. In my opinion, I do think we should take these trees. We have agreed to leave one tree on the back side that's away. We're gonna trim it, but the bulk of the trees really do need to go.
Well, I'm just going to ask a real direct question. Because again, the ANSI 300 standards talk about having an arborist or arborist trained folks doing the cutting. If an arborist or whoever is doing the tree cutting looked at the trees and said, yeah, you could cut some of these back so that they wouldn't grow up in the lines for 7 years. If they said that and say, if some of the trees fell into that category, could you string the wires on those poles you have out there? Or are you saying, no, it can't be done? We can't string the wires and run new wires with any trees under it.
No, you can string new wires over trees. It is that the issue isn't stringing the wire across. Our crews use a rope to pull in the wire, so it would never touch the trees. It's just when from a reliability standpoint, we're trying to make it so that we don't have tree issues that crop up in the future.
Okay,
And
that's my question. Kevin or Ken, you want to go?
Yeah, I'm a little confused based on the photos we saw the last time. Is the PUD proposal to install new poles and the three-phase power line on the side of the street where there are already power lines, or is it the other side of the street? Because if I'm recalling correctly, the trees in question didn't have power lines above them, or am I?
You couldn't see the lines, Ken.
You're
Okay.
You're mistaken, Ken. Yeah, they actually have the new poles set already. The new poles are there. And I'm gonna forward the photos to Mike again and see if he can put them up.
Okay.
We're gonna test the strengths of our quickness here.
So the new poles are there, and the trees at this point would be directly under the power lines, and because of the kind of trees they are, and I appreciate the fact that these are significant trees, but the problem is that ultimately they will grow up into the power lines if not very regularly trimmed, which will of course affect the shape of the trees.
Okay. Dan, you want to go?
Yeah, Ken touched on part of the discussion, and that's, again, if we don't deal with these, there's going to be a continued problem upstream conceivably, even if we put taller poles in or whatever, we run into the same issues down the road. What's the best use of public funds? That's part of this discussion as well. Just thinking back, obviously there's two sides to every issue, and this one is tree trimming is the issue, or tree trimming removal. And at the home show, I had people advocating that we aren't spending enough on at $1 million of removing trees because their power keeps being, keeps going out from the same kind of things, the same kind of trees, and that we need to trim better. So again, it comes down to removal versus trimming. What is the upstream effect on other customers? But for me, it comes down to more. It's about fire mitigation, safety, and the liability that come with both of those things. So as long as we've got a policy, and I think we need to be consistent, because I know, again, even my district, we've had people who've had trees that they wanted us to take out that weren't even in the right of way. And we said, no, those, even if they're on your property, that's not something we're going to do, because we have to be consistent and operate within our legal ability, which is in the right of ways or the easements, and to responsibly spend public funds to optimize the amount of service that we provide at a minimum cost. So for me, I see the issues, and I know this isn't an isolated issue, but I think for now we need to stick with our policy. And we already know what's going on upstream from here, that, if we need to revisit the policy later in a year or whatever, that's fine, or adjust our budgets or whatever it may be. But I think for now, these trees that I'm looking at, this cedar in particular, it's hard to judge everything. I haven't driven by there, but that is a tree that needs to go. I'm just that simple to me, that tree is going to be problematic as long as it is there.
So I just want a point of clarification. Let's not quite do discussion yet. We should be in the question phase, questioning staff, and then I want to turn it over for public comment. But Joel, did you have a clarification or input?
Well, I would say I just echo what Commissioner Tupper just said, and I think that from a risk and liability standpoint, sticking with the policy that the PUD has is important in the event that there is a fire. As you know, there's been some very, very significant judgments against utilities for trees falling on lines that cause fires. So, staff, I think, has developed a process to go through and identify and clear out rights of way and easements that represent problems to not only operations, but risks from fires. And, here what's being discussed gives me a little, from my perspective, and my perspective again is just protecting the PUD from potential risk and liability, that somehow if we make a judgment to keep one tree versus another, and that tree causes, and we keep it there, and somehow it causes a fire and damage from that fire, it puts us in jeopardy, at least some risk. So I'd encourage whatever management is doing to stick with the policy and do it in a thoughtful way, so that we're not inviting additional risk.
Okay, Dan, do you have a question, or if you want to do comments and discussion, I'd say hold it, but if you have a question, fire away.
Sorry, I just keep forgetting to take that hand down. I'm not looking at the picture. It normally shows on your picture, your hand is up, and I don't have my photo up there, so.
All right, well, we went a little further into discussion than we probably should have, but I want to give public members here a chance to comment. And yeah.
So I'd just like to draw your attention to the specific.
And maybe you could come forward, because it won't pick up very well. Unfortunately, the mic for you is that, and anywhere in the front row or is perfect.
So
Thank you.
I'd like to draw your attention to the specific ordinance under code 19.06.130. And it does say that healthy trees over 24 inches in diameter or that are over 100 years of age shall be priority trees for preservation. Many of those trees, well, as I said before, there's 5 trees that are over 24 inches. Some of those trees have 3 trunks or 2. And so an arborist could come and look at that, and if there was tree sculpting that could happen, that's in the realm of selectivity as opposed to just straight removal. And I think there's a mindset here that's, straight removal. And I think that if an arborist was able to come out and stick those trees up, we could come to a conclusion that would be, preserve the trees at that, or some of those trees. I'm not asking for all of the trees, but definitely, as that ordinance said, 5 of those trees should be preserved. They are they're at least 80 years old. Some are older. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Got a bunch of hands up online here. Kevin's got his hand up, Dan's got his hand up, and then looks like Roger's got his hand up. Roger? What's that? I don't know if Roger's there or not.
I can't hear him. He must be muted.
He just unmuted himself.
Thank you. When's the conversation going to change from taking down the tree or not to undergrounding or not? I see that Pacific County and San Juan County have solved this problem by undergrounding most of their lines. And I'd like an answer. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Roger. Phil, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, Phil Stover, District 1. I think there've been a couple instances of fires of some sort related to power lines in this area in the last 12 months or so. So if the conditions were windy and dry and we started a fire that couldn't be stopped and we might destroy some houses or something like that, I think fire is a big risk. That's it.
Yeah.
And let's see. So Kevin, did you want to respond to anything before I go to Dan?
Yeah, we have looked, and there is one tree in there that the PUD has said, okay, we can do some trimming and keep that tree. So it's, there is a tree, it sounds like we haven't spent time there. We have, and the tree that we're going to keep will still have to be trimmed. But we are trying to be good neighbors, and we have agreed to leave one tree with some trimmings that have to be done to make it safe.
Kevin, the public comment that was raised cited the Port Townsend Municipal Code, and I actually wrote that chapter when I was with the city. So I guess, one of the questions is, has the city been, because this is city street right of way that we share with them, and they've got their own rules about removal of trees and rights of way. Has the city been consulted on this project?
On the overall project, they have been consulted, Jeff. I don't know if they've walked the specific stretch with the city. When I will state that when there are kind of a tree in question, a danger tree, our rules that say that we can take them out for public safety overrides the city code.
Right, the RCWs
Yeah.
for utility, right? Roger, you still have your hand up. Is that intentional?
Oh, I didn't get an answer to my question.
The
When does
question
the
of
conversation
undergrounding.
change to undergrounding? Yes, please.
Right. What is our policy on undergrounding? Because that does long
Can I
term.
comment?
Sure, go ahead, Ken.
Roger mentioned Pacific County, and it's true that Pacific County solved its problems with the lines coming down by undergrounding. But that was in the aftermath of a major storm and with substantial federal funds to support that, because the cost of undergrounding lines is far more expensive than stringing lines overhead. You know, I'm in favor of that, but it is an expensive proposition, and I'm glad that Joel and Commissioner Tupper raised the fire liability issue, because I'd like to remind my fellow commissioners and anybody else who's listening that there is a major problem now getting fire insurance, and the cost of premiums is literally skyrocketing. Not to mention having experienced a wildfire a number of years ago in Northern California. This is not something that we want to happen here. And being on the Board of Commissioners, being involved as a staff person on the PUD, we try to compromise, but there are hard choices that have to be made based on policy and based on priority. So where we can, I think it's desirable to compromise, but that's not always going to be possible, because our main job is providing reliable and safe power to our customers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. And Roger brings up the undergrounding issue. And when I met with the folks on site, I did talk a little bit about the Sims Way project. And Kevin, what's the undergrounding going to cost along that stretch?
So a little different. We're going to have a little over $1 million in that stretch for the undergrounding. It is a transmission line, so it is more expensive to build that than it is distribution.
Apples and oranges a little bit.
It's quite a bit more expensive on Sims Way. Here, the underground was talked about, but because of cost, and this area needs some improvement, so this is something we could come in and do right away. That also factored into the decision.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that staff has taken the time and we've been able to deliberate this. When I met with the folks on site, I told them this is not an easy thing because of the tree species that were planted there, and that that they're trying to grow up into the line. So I kind of expressed that, and I expressed that there is the opportunity, behind these trees on their side of the utility wires to plant new trees that can grow pretty fast, but are prunable if they ever get close. Things like Scotch pine and shore pine and stuff like that. And there's other evergreen species that don't try to grow so big. Dan?
Yeah, so I think Kevin kind of touched on the question I had, which was the ordinance that was being talked about, whether or not our ability to take care of these right of ways trumped that, and it sounded like the answer was yes to that. I didn't hear Joel say any opposition to that, so that kind of answered the question I had. Again, on the undergrounding, to Roger, I truly agree with Roger that we should try to underground as much as possible whenever possible. But you've heard, it's obviously a lot more cost expensive wise to underground. And the other thing, in this particular instance, I don't think that would even be an option, because what you're going to do, because of the size of the tree and the width of the right of ways, is you're going to it's going to be invasive to dig, period. But you're going to disrupt the root balls and the trees and make them unstable. You're going to conceivably kill the tree anyways. And again, like I said, it's a much greater cost to underground. So I think even in this situation, if we tried to look at those kind of options, the decision would still come back around to removal is probably the proper course of action for this particular instance. That's just kind of how I see this so far. I haven't driven by it. Like, in full disclosure, I've only looked at the picture here. So maybe there's something I'm missing, but from the size of the trees that are being described and the width of our right of way or easements, I don't see many options for this particular instance.
Well, in response to your question and the questions brought up by the public, that code that they're referring to the city's tree conservation standards. That was really written when we had undeveloped land and people were coming in proposing to log it all and then just let the land sit there vacant and not have anything happen. And we wrote that code so that there was very limited thinning that people could do prior to development. We basically said, no, don't take down the trees and wait 10 or 20 years to develop your property, because that was flooding neighboring properties and causing issues. Wait to take the trees down when you actually have a proposed project, that you have a subdivision or whatever. Then you can tie the two together, and the city can say, as part of your project, you need to keep these certain trees. That's how that code was written and its intent.
Commissioner Randall, does that make you an originalist?
I've got my fingerprints on it. I guess I'm guilty by association.
Well, with these trees, it's almost a founding father.
So, did we have any members of the public that want to say anything that they didn't get to say?
I'm told that there's an arborist working for most of the companies, most of the tree removal companies. And I would think that if there was any pushback, as there is with this particular set of trees, that that would be a good option. You are already hiring the company, and for them to bring out an arborist, I would think that's just, the way to go. And they could look into some selectivity of those trees. And my one question is, are the lines, are they lateral or are they horizontal? The three.
So can you put up the first picture we had?
Picture.
That original picture shows exactly the kind of power that what's going to look. So they're going to put a cross arm up there, and then there's going to be 3 wires going horizontal across the top. So that's what it's going to look like when it's done. Well, and I think again, I appreciate what everybody's trying to do. The staff is trying to staff knows that sometimes tree cutting, maybe nobody cares. A lot of times they do care. So they're trying to get notice out to folks so there's a chance to engage and talk. I think the staff has tried to do that in this case. I was concerned about it, and I appreciate my other commissioners putting this on the agenda so we could talk about this more fully. As I said to Kevin on the phone, these issues aren't going away. We're constantly going, there's this tension, a tree is a potential fire. It's also, if you go to neighborhoods, like when I was in Seattle last summer when it was really hot, the neighborhood I was in was part of this Olmsted Park neighborhood and had a lot of tree canopies. It was literally 20 degrees cooler in that neighborhood than when I walked 4 blocks the other way and got into the commercial areas where there were really no trees. So it can be a safety issue from people getting frickin' heat stroke. And it can be an issue with flooding and costs for the city with putting in stormwater. So we have to balance these things. And as I told the folks on site, when a tree comes down, it doesn't mean you can't plant a new tree, further back where it will be safe and get new life going. So, it's a challenge, but I appreciate everybody's time and patience and talking to each other instead of past each other. And I guess the last plea from the public here, Kevin, is, hey, this is Asplund. We think, if staff looks more at it and thinks that there's any other trees that could be possibly kept, they're just asking if that could be done. I would echo the same thing. There's not formal commissioner action that's being asked on this one. I think the consensus of the commissioners is to defer to staff. But I think those are questions that we've asked, and let you do your work, and please keep the neighbors informed as things move on. Okay. Thank you for coming. All right. Is there anything else on this matter or anything else tonight? Not seeing any. We are at 5:29 and we are adjourned. So Ken, I hope your knee doesn't kill you and gets better. And Dan and Kevin, hope you guys enjoy the Skamania Waputa stuff, and I'd love to hear how it goes.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Good evening,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank
Bye.
you, everybody.
Good night.